In the summer of 1943, as the world was torn apart by the chaos of World War II, a strange rumor began to spread among naval officers, dock workers, and sailors stationed in Philadelphia. Whispers of a top-secret experiment, a project so daring, so unimaginable, that it seemed ripped straight from the pages of a science fiction novel. It would later be known as the Philadelphia Experiment. And according to the legend, it was the day the United States Navy made an entire warship disappear into thin air. The story centers on the USS Eldridge, a newly built destroyer escort designed to protect vital merchant ships from German U-boats. In 1943, these submarines were sinking supply convoys at terrifying rates. Every week, the Atlantic swallowed tons of food, weapons, and soldiers. The Navy was desperate, willing to try anything to turn the tide of war. And so the whispers began. Scientists, some even claimed Albert Einstein himself, were secretly working with the military. Their mission? To test a radical new technology based on the manipulation of powerful electromagnetic fields. The alleged objective wasn't simple radar camouflage or painted deception. No. This was something far bolder. To bend light itself around a ship, to distort space and magnetic fields so completely that the vessel would become invisible. Imagine it. A warship vanishing from sight, slipping past German submarines undetected, crossing the ocean like a ghost. It was the ultimate weapon. On October 28, 1943, the supposed experiment reached its climax. Dock workers at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard later swore they had seen it with their own eyes. That morning, as sailors stood at their stations aboard the USS Eldridge, a strange humming filled the air. It was not the sound of engines, but something deeper, a vibration that rattled bones, made teeth ache, and sent shivers crawling down the spine. Witnesses described a shimmering field, a glowing haze of greenish-blue energy, wrapping itself around the destroyer. The very air seemed charged, sparking and twisting like a living storm. Then, without warning, the outline of the Eldridge began to blur. Its sharp edges softened, bent, and wavered, until, in a sudden flash, the ship was gone. Not hidden, not cloaked. Gone. For long seconds, stunned silence gripped the harbor. Dock workers rubbed their eyes. Sailors on nearby vessels shouted in disbelief. Some even screamed. All that remained was the eerie glow of that strange electric haze, hovering like a ghostly cloud above the water. And then, as suddenly as it had disappeared, the USS Eldridge returned. At first, there was relief. The gray destroyer stood again in the dock, seemingly intact. But that relief quickly turned to horror, because the crew was not the same. Men staggered across the deck, disoriented, vomiting, their faces pale as if drained of life itself. Some screamed uncontrollably, clawing at their skin, unable to comprehend what had just happened, and others were far worse. Dock workers would later swear that they saw sailors fused into the very steel of the ship, arms embedded in bulkheads, legs welded into the deck plates, faces half merged with cold, unyielding metal. Some screamed in agony for only a moment before collapsing. Others were already dead, their bodies forever trapped in the ship's structure. A few men simply vanished, never seen again. The legend goes further. Some claimed the Eldridge had not only vanished from sight, but had physically transported across space. Reports surfaced from Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away, describing a mysterious destroyer appearing in the harbor for several minutes before vanishing again. The story suggested the ship had teleported, perhaps even slipped through dimensions. Other accounts were even more chilling. Survivors allegedly told of being trapped in a void, suspended in darkness, floating weightless as if outside of time. When the ship reappeared, they fell back into reality, but some never truly recovered. Rumors spread of sailors who later lost their sanity, plagued by visions of impossible landscapes haunted by whispers from beyond. One story described crewmen who would suddenly fade out, disappearing in front of friends and family weeks after the experiment. In taverns around Philadelphia, drunken ex-sailors muttered about shipmates who would vanish into thin air mid-conversation, never to return. The Navy, of course, denied everything. Officially, the USS Eldridge never participated in any such experiment. Records show it was stationed elsewhere, performing routine duties, but the rumors refused to die. Witnesses claimed documents were altered, logs rewritten, evidence destroyed. The legend became unstoppable. And then came the name most closely tied to the tale, Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende. In the 1950s, he wrote letters describing in vivid detail what he said had happened in Philadelphia in 1943. His accounts spread like wildfire, giving the story new life, fueling books, interviews, and conspiracy theories. Allen claimed the experiment was part of Einstein's unified field theory, a branch of physics so advanced that it could twist time and space themselves. Skeptics insist the story is nothing more than myth, a tale blown out of proportion by rumor and fantasy. They argue that powerful electromagnetic tests did occur, but only in attempts to degauss ships, to make them invisible to magnetic minds, not to human eyes. They say Allen's letters were the rantings of a disturbed mind, and that no credible evidence has ever surfaced to prove the ship disappeared. And yet, doubts linger. Too many witnesses claim to have seen something extraordinary that day. Too many details refuse to fade into obscurity. The legend has burrowed itself into the imagination of generations. Because deep down, the Philadelphia experiment asks a question that gnaws at us all. What if it really happened? What if, in the desperate heart of World War II, the United States briefly unlocked forces so powerful they could rip holes in reality? What if, in chasing invincibility, they touched something they were never meant to control? The truth remains shrouded. Maybe the USS Eldridge was just another destroyer, its story warped by rumor and paranoia. Or maybe, just maybe, on that October morning in 1943, for a brief and terrifying moment, humanity tore open the fabric of the universe, and a ship, along with its crew, slipped into the unknown.